excited to be here talking to the Audubon Naturalist Society group. Thank you, Ciaranella, for inviting me to talk about mammals, about primates, which is something that we don't have here, unfortunately, in the wild in North America. But well, I'm going to take you onto a tropical trip and we'll be transformed. And you'll be able to immerse yourself in the world of primates. So wanted to talk to you all tonight about what primates are. I'll explain a little bit about myself. Just to introduce myself again, you can see my name on the screen, Anneke DeLuycker. I am a primatologist, so I study primates in the wild, and I'm also a professor at the Smithsonian Mason School of Conservation, which is an interesting partnership between the Smithsonian Institution and George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. But we teach courses out at the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute in Front Royal, Virginia. So I'll talk to you a little bit more about what I do and my background. And I'll also just give you a nice introduction to primates, what they are, some of the threats that they face in the wild, some of the challenges that they have, and also some solutions. So what easy things that you can do to engage in the conservation of primates. Okay. So to start, I know, oh, there's a little weird mark in the screen. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe that, oh, there we go. Okay. So first starting off, yeah, what is a primate? Most of you are familiar with a chimpanzee, hopefully. You have seen chimpanzees and are familiar with chimpanzees, probably due to the tireless, amazing work from Jane Goodall, who has studied them in the wild and brought them to light to most people. But some of us would be hard pressed to know that this creature is a primate. This is a tarsier, or this primate. This is a snub-nosed monkey, an emperor tamarin, or this bizarre-looking creature, an ii. Or some of you might recognize this primate. Maybe it looks like a gibbon, but it's actually a siamang. It's related to gibbons, and it is an ape. Or how about this creature, a gray slender loris, or our red-shanked Duke langur, owl monkey, or white-nosed Saki monkeys. So I would love to just spend the whole evening showing you the more than 500 different primate species there are in the world, but unfortunately, we just don't have that much time. But just giving you kind of a smattering of look at all the different types and different anatomical, morphological features of these wonderful, amazing creatures that are called primates. Now, primates are, of course, mammals. They're in the class Mammalia. Mammals, as most of you know, these are warm-blooded animals that produce milk. They have hair or fur, and they typically give birth to live young, right? Main groups of mammals include marsupials, egg-laying mammals, and of course the placental mammals. And these guys just show so much great ecological and morphological diversity. And they have this, unique specializations kind of correlated with these distinctive traits. So primates evolved about 55 to 65 million years ago, which is relatively recent, considering that we can find early mammal fossils as far back as 210, 220 million years ago. So on this graphic here, it's rather whimsical, just to show you kind of the diversity of mammal lineages or mammal taxa that have evolved. And primates is up there. It's relatively recent. They have a number of shared features among all mammals, right? They have a typical vertebrate kind of structure. However, there are a number of different features that all primates have that are characteristic to primates, and that's how you can tell a primate apart from another mammal. So what is a primate? What makes a primate special? How, why is a raccoon not a primate or some other mammal, right? Well, again, like I said, they have this suite of traits. And one of those traits is grasping hands and feet. So most primates live in an arboreal existence or climbing in the trees. So they need these grasping hands and feet, right? They also have at the ends of their digits, they have cushioned pads, which provides more surface area. And also on their hands, they have dermatoglyphs, which you might know as fingerprints, right? That creates a lot of friction or gripping or traction, helps hang on to those branches or grab the branches. Primates also have flattened fingernails. Some primates have claws, but they're actually not true claws. They're modified nails that look like claws. But all of that helps in grabbing onto tree branches. Flattened nails helps being able to grip around a tree branch. And so primates use their hands and feet in fundamentally different ways than other mammals do, even if other mammals are found in the trees. Another key feature that makes primates special are their visual acuity. They can see really well in a simple form. But since most primates are arboreal and have evolved to be arboreal, they find most of their resources in trees. So fruits, leaves, insects, that sort. So in order to see all of these food items well in a 3D environment and go from branch to branch and go at the tips of branches to collect this food, they need really, really improved visual acuity. So this includes like greatly enlarged size of their binocular field of vision, more than any other mammal groups. And binocular cues are actually, they're good for seeing in distances, but they're also very useful for fine depth perception at really close ranges. So the eye orbits are large relative to the skull size. The eyes also face forward and the eyes are placed close together. So they're not on the sides of the skull like other mammals, but they're in the front of the skull. And that's the number one way you can tell that it's a primate. They have, oh yeah.
I think we're having like the microphone might be interacting with your hair because there's a little bit of friction that we can hear when you move. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I didn't know if there's any feedback. Let me see if I can fix that. Technical difficulties with the hair. I could even tie my hair back a little bit. See if that'll help. All right. And maybe it's my hands. I'm a very gestural speaker, so maybe it's my hands making weird noises on the speaker. Did that improve things?
I wouldn't know until you move again.
Okay, all right. Okay, so yeah, so really good visual acuity, right? And then their eyeballs are also contained either in a socket or have a bar, a protective bar to stabilize the eyes. So larger eyes means a larger image is being able to form on the retina. And a large retinal image is then sampled by many small, tightly packed photoreceptors in their central retina. So good visual acuity. Another thing that makes primates special is their long life history. You could call primates, you could kind of say that primates are dictated by the mantra, life in the slow lane. And that is an aspect of a lot of their life history characteristics. So they give birth at a later age. They have a very long gestation period. They have a delayed maturation period. They have small litters. They just mature slower and live longer. And they also exhibit this very, increased time of parental care. The mom and dad taking care, or both, or either or, taking care of the infant. And so this shows this really greater dependence on the flexible learned behaviors, socialization. And that brings us to the last point of why primates are special, in that they are highly social. And other animals and mammals are social, but primates in particular tend to live in complex social groups that are more or less permanent. And that gives them increased benefits to the sociality, right? Anti-predator benefits, cooperation, and their social relationships tend to be different than in other mammals, in that they can form these relationships that don't have anything to do with mating or reproduction. They can form what we would call friendships or cooperative relationships or long-term bonds. So all of these characteristics that maybe are not unique to primates, maybe other mammals have some of these characteristics, but put together, this suite of traits is what makes up the primate order, right? In the class Mammalia, right? And so primates are also really, speciose. So what we call species rich, lots of different species around the globe. So they're the most species rich group of mammals besides rodents and bats. And they're found, like I said, all over the globe on most land masses except Antarctica and Australia and the Arctic. And they're mostly found in tropical, subtropical forests around the equatorial ring around the globe. So we have you can see on the map, we have our New World monkeys found in these forests in South and Central America. Then we have our Old World monkeys and apes found in Asia and Africa. Then we have our Procimians, and the Procimians are kind of characterized in different ways. I'll show you, I'll talk a little bit more about them, but Procimians still retain some of these earlier traits that the most earliest primates have evolved with. And that includes lemurs, lorises, and tarsiers. Lemurs are only found on Madagascar, the island of Madagascar, which is a part of Africa. You can see as that big yellow island there on the map. And then we have lorises. Lorises can be found in Asia and Africa. Lorises include the slow loris, pygmy loris, and in Africa they're called podos. There's also galagos or bush babies. And then of course the tarsiers in Asia as well. So really, really, widespread in a lot of different of these, again, tropical and subtropical forests. Some primates spend more or less time in the trees depending on what they eat, but they're really all found in these tropical forests. So why do primates matter? Why do we care about primates? Well, we should care about primates. They're important in many different ways. The first is social and cultural. So socially and culturally, right? So in some religious or cultural traditions, particularly Buddhism or Hinduism or Shintoism, they're revered. Could be in Asia, Southeast Asia. They're also in ancient monkey temples. They're kind of revered. Also in Mayan cultures in the Americas, who have these animistic animal belief systems. And so one example is the Hanuman langur that you can see a picture of there. They're protected at these temples. They're also considered sacred cultural figures or represented as people, sometimes eaten as food for their sustainability. But primates are crucially important to humanity. They're our closest living biological relatives, and they have played a large role in the formation of a lot of social and cultural traditions across the globe. Primates also have unique evolutionary importance, right? So these evolutionary traits are adaptations to dealing with the environment around them. So all this morphological, again, anatomical, ecological, behavioral diversity that we see across the primate order really just helps us understand how natural selection has helped shaped these behaviors, because they're just dealing with all these challenges of life in the forest, you know, finding food, finding mates, reproducing, rearing young, avoiding predators, eating, etc. And we can also look at their evolutionary history as insight into our own evolution as well in some cases. We can also detect maybe disease origins or the evolution and transmission of, you know, certain diseases or pathogens, or understand human behavior, cognition, you know, parenting, kind of social bonds, conflict use, tool use, and other kinds of aspects as well. Oh, are you guys still seeing that screen?
Yes.
Okay, okay, great. And then finally, ecologically, right? So primates are extremely important in these forest ecosystems. They are what we would call megafauna in these forests. They're one of these most important vertebrates of forest ecosystems. And they evolved during the time that angiosperms came on the scene. So these fruit-bearing trees, when they were diversifying. So primates play a really important role in frugivory, or fruit eating, because they eat a lot of fruits. Fruits typically have a lot of seeds, so they're major seed dispersers. And so there's lots of studies that have shown that, you know, over 80% to 90% of all woody plant species in tropical forests produce these vertebrate dispersed fleshy fruits, right? These yummy fruits that want to be spread. We know that tropical forests store about half or more than half of the world's carbon, primarily thanks to these large fruit-eating frugivores that digest the seeds of these large carbon-storing trees throughout the ecosystem. So, you know, if these big trees go extinct, the capacity of forests to store carbon goes down, and negative effects are just exacerbated. So we need primates. We need all of this, these interactions, right? Primates also contribute to forest growth dynamics. They're also herbivores, so they're consuming the non-fruit part of the plants. They're eating leaves and stems and vines and new growth from plants. And so they are also contributing to seedling and sapling recruitment and how the forest changes over time. And they modify nutrient cycling within forests. So they play a really important role in structuring tropical forest ecosystems. They're also predators of a lot of insects. They eat a lot of insects in some cases, and they're also prey. Hawks, eagles predate upon them, and they also can be pollinators in some cases if they're focusing on the nectar of some flowers, and then they get the pollen over their faces. So importance, socially, culturally, evolutionarily, and ecologically. So this is me. Why do I study primates? So like I said, I'm a primatologist. My background is in zoology and anthropology and ecology. And I look to better understand how ecological conditions influence behavioral patterns, like sociality, and how organisms adapt to these variable ecological conditions, particularly those species that are restricted in their habitat or ecological requirements. And this can have a lot of implications when habitats are changing very fast, which is becoming quite the norm as we're seeing a lot of changes across our globe. Primates are also wonderful flagship species, so these emblematic, charismatic animals that can be used as symbols for conservation effort to protect areas where they exist, right? They're also our closest living relatives, like I said before, and they're just particularly interesting and diverse in terms of their behavior and ecology. And I have had the fortunate luck and opportunities of being able to study primates in different parts of South and Central America. I studied black and gold howler monkeys in Argentina. I studied mantled howler monkeys in Nicaragua and Panama. I studied the monk saki monkeys in Guyana. I studied brown titi monkeys in southern Peru. I also studied the species that I'm going to talk about tonight with you, the San Martin titi monkey in northern Peru, as well as the yellow-tailed woolly monkeys. So lots of diverse, ecological realms and ecological requirements. But my interests in primates led me to focus on a region of South America that is particularly biodiverse. And what's highlighted in orange on your screen is the Andes, the tropical Andes, one of the richest and most diverse regions on the planet. And the ecosystem that's prevalent here is tropical cloud forest. It's a type of, evergreen mountain forest, a very delicate ecosystem. There's clouds and mist, and when it comes in contact with vegetation, it creates this cool, moisture, misty environment where epiphytes like bromeliads and mosses and ferns tend to grow all over the trees and basically everywhere. So these forests are topographically very complex as well. Lots of valleys, lots of ridges, and that also has led to many, specialized plants and animals. And the soils are also crucial. They sustain the trees in this spongy, wet, waterlogged mass, which is, highly organic. And so in these regions, biodiversity and endemism is very high. So endemism means these species are found in a particular area and nowhere else. They're kind of localized to specific regions, right? So high species diversity and lots of species found in particular areas and nowhere else. So just to introduce you all to the titi monkeys, these are titi monkeys. They're divided now into 3 different genera, which are given here. I'm not displaying all of the faces of titi monkeys. There's actually about 35 recognized species right now. They're really diverse. They're diverse mostly in fur coloration. You can see just from their faces. But, all titi monkeys are distributed in South America in Amazonian and Atlantic forests. I'll show you where those are on a map. They're all small bodied. They're about 1 kilogram in weight. So that's about the size of cottontail rabbit. They are predominantly fruit eating. And the most interesting part about titi monkeys that I think and that I studied the most was their pair bonded group structure, which means that they're found in groups consisting of an adult male, adult female, and their offspring. And that's it in their groups, right? So lots of other primate groups have typically a multi-male, multi-female, and they're, there's lots of different types of social organization, but that's fairly unique and rare among primates. And then they also display what's this strong paternal offspring care. So paternal, right? Male, the dad. So the male takes care of the infant most of the time, besides nursing, which the female necessarily has to do. The male is taking care of the infant. So those 2 salient features were really intriguing to me to study this primate. So here's just to show you the geographical distribution of titi monkeys in South America. So these ones that are found in the Amazonian regions, which are shaded in green and orange and overlapping areas in that hatched red. So all those areas inhabited by a lot of different species of titi monkeys, as well as the Atlantic forests that I mentioned. A few titi monkeys live on these coastal forests of Brazil. But the titi monkey that I studied, which is Plectrophoebus oneanthe, was found in this region indicated by that red arrow there. So they have a pretty small geographic distribution. So They are endemic to the region of San Martin. San Martin regions in Peru and other states of South America are kind of like the states in the US. They each have like their own government organization. So when I started my studies, nothing was known about the natural history of this particular species. So I collected basic ecological data and social behavior data. Actually, when I started studying the species, nothing was even, nothing was known about the species in the wild, and no photographs had been taken of this species in the wild as well. So I got to also contribute to that. And I also contributed to its status, its conservation status and assessment as well. So this is when the titi monkey in the wild that I got to study. And again, just to show you my study site in Peru, the region of San Martin, and that orange outlined area is the current known distribution of this species. So it's pretty small. That area is about the size of the state of Connecticut. It's very small. And this is what the area looks like, the forest. So these fragmented forests, the forest mostly being converted to cattle pastures and agricultural crops, growing coffee, yucca, other products. So these discontinuous patches, would impede emigrating subadults trying to find new groups to form families with, right, and create new territories of their own needed resources. So that's a particular problem. These monkeys are really neat. They, again, like I said, they're found in these pair bonded groups, so male and female, and the adult pairs, basically they hold these territories and they give these loud duet calls. They can, you can hear them a kilometer away, and the calls have been described as an operatic turkey gobble. So I'll let you guys listen in and see what you think. Might have to turn up your volume. Okay, so I'm not sure if that was an operatic turkey gobble, but there it is. So yeah, the males and females have similar call patterns, but they differ in their timing and the tone. So that's why you hear that kind of that interesting overlap. So yeah, and this is a group at their sleeping tree, getting ready to just spend the night hanging out on the trees. You can see there's four to that particular group. And they also do this thing called tail twining, where they wrap their tails around each other like a braid, kind of creates this, sense of social contact and touch, social bonding. But some of you might have noticed that there's a little tail stuck in there, peeping out. And that is also an infant that is a part of the group as well. So there's actually 5 members in this particular group. So like I said, the titi monkeys, the male takes care of the infant. The male mostly, grooms the infant, carries the infant on its back. It might also do things like, retrieve it if it falls, and it just spends a lot more time with the infant in terms of close contact and defense and protection, right? So paternal care, so care by the dad or the father, is widespread among birds and also fish and some amphibians and insects as well. But paternal care or care by the father is rare in mammals. We only see it in some carnivores and some rodents and some primates. So, why is it so rare in mammals? Well, it's thought that the majority of mammals, right, have this internal gestation and pregnancy, right, the placental pregnancy, and females lactate. So it kind of results in this very skewed parental investment where, you know, females lactate and gestate, and males are more likely to kind of continue to search for additional reproductive partners, right? Why stick around? But among primates, this intense paternal care is, you know, is manifested in only a few distantly related species, and they kind of, you know, differ in the degree of how the dad takes care of the primate. So it's really interesting. So I focused on that in my studies as well. And during my study, I had the fortune of witnessing and recording a birth in the wild of a titi monkey. And to my knowledge, it's the only video existing of a titi monkey birth in the wild. And a Japanese film crew came out and filmed portions of my study site and my study species. And they also included the video that I took of the titi monkey giving birth. So that's what I'm going to show you. So the video that you'll see is actually a video that I took, and I apologize for the shakiness and the graininess of it, but I was having to hold the video camera in my hand. I didn't have a tripod or anything because it was a little spontaneous. But the voice speaking is from the Japanese documentary that was made of this video. So yeah, so here we go, enjoy. I'm gonna press play. It's gonna expand a little bit, but again, I apologize for the graininess. Oh, I might have to, oops, sorry, wrong. There we go.
This is rare film of a titi giving birth. It's nearly time for the baby to be born. The male stays by his mate's side and grooms her. As the birth draws closer, he becomes even more attentive. Finally, the baby arrives. The father reaches out to hold the new arrival. Their bond is sealed. Male titi's dedication to their young starts straight away.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I hope you guys were able to see that pretty well. Yeah, the male was right by the female the whole time she was having contractions, and it was incredible. So imagine this, you know, 1 kilogram monkey about the size of a cottontail rabbit giving birth, and they give birth to an infant that's about 7 to 8% of the mom's weight. So human babies are about 6% of the mom's weight. So a little bit heavy. Think of it as a, you know, pretty large cantaloupe or whatever. But there's really a rapid growth of the infant's weight after birth. So that growth rate kind of really skyrockets after birth. You can see in this photo that 10-day-old infant shot compared to when it's 4 months old. And it's big, it's heavy. I don't know how the male does it, but yeah, it's a pretty big weight gain. And so this male caretaking behavior is quite extensive and quite obligate. They are carrying around that infant about 90 to 95% of the time. There's lots of really interesting studies in captivity as well that have shown that dad titi monkeys have higher prolactin levels than non-fathers. So the prolactin is this hormone that's secreted by the anterior pituitary gland, and it's related to caretaking and behaviors. They've also done some studies in captivity that show that the titi monkey infants prefer being with the father over the mother. So they will experience a adrenal stress response when they're separated from their dad, even if the mother is physically present. And it's really the only physiological or hormonal evidence of attachment between a mammal infant and its putative father and not the mother. And so the primary attachment figure in this case is the father, not the mother in titi monkeys. And the kind of source, the determining factor of that is the source of contact, right, from the father, not nourishment from the mother. So it's fascinating. There's lots of hypotheses that, say why male care. It might increase the female's reproductive output, allowing her more time to forage for food, or it might reduce some energetic costs as well because of that rapid growth of the infant. It's really neat. So in addition to my research and kind of conservation efforts and action for these primates, I'm also an educator and trainer. And I also give, education, talks, outreach, and engagement like this talk I'm giving right now. The picture in the lower left-hand corner is me with the director of the Japanese documentary when they came to film field site. That documentary was filmed in Japan on a Japanese television station, kind of like our PBS station here. So like I said, I teach at the Smithsonian Mason School of Conservation. Briefly, this is a hands-on experiential learning where we offer programs, semester-long programs and summer courses for undergraduates, also graduate students and professionals. But we teach them concepts of conservation in various ways. And they engage in a number of different courses while they live on site. And I also teach overseas field courses on primate behavior and ecology. I've taught field courses at the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute on Barro, Colorado in Panama, and also at the Los Amigos Biological Field Station, the Madre de Dios region in Peru as well. So giving students these hands-on opportunities to immerse themselves in, in concepts of primate behavior, how to record primate behavior and so forth. So why should we care, right? Why should we care about primates? So most primates, like I said, are found in forests. Forests are stores of carbon, right? They're continuing to take in and store carbon from the atmosphere. So forests are this really crucial dynamic in our global carbon cycle. Tropical forests occupy more than 10 million kilometers squared of area. And so they're just storing and cycling billions of tons of carbons each year. So this means that any changes in the carbon balance of forests can have really big impacts on the global carbon cycle. And we also know in recent studies that have shown as recent as 2017, more than half of all primates, so that 60%, are threatened with extinction. So they are endangered or threatened with extinction. And that's about 3/4 of 500 recognized primate species, 504. So most threats to primates come from deforestation, right? Cutting down trees, habitat loss, losing their habitat, and subsequently converting their habitat into something different. So we know that, that cutting down forests also releases that carbon into the atmosphere, contributes to global warming. Habitat loss due to agricultural growth, such as plantations, right? Palm oil plantations is one that I featured there in the lower left-hand corner. There's a staggering number of consumer products that now use palm oil. It's also a source of oil, biodiesel. Other habitat loss alteration factors include timber logging, livestock farming, cattle ranching, and illegal gold mining, which you see in the lower right-hand corner. All of that bare patches is due to dredging up, cutting down trees and dredging up the kind of alluvial soils underneath to extract gold. Other threats to primates include bushmeat commercialization. So this isn't subsistence hunting, right? Just hunting a primate for your own consumption if you're living in small areas. This is, selling, hunting primates quite dramatically, large scale, and selling it in markets. So that occurs mostly in Africa and Asia, but there's quite a lot going on in South America as well. This also includes trapping and trade in live primates, those primates that are used as pets or in entertainment or subjects of biomedical experimentation. Unfortunately, there's no federal laws in the US banning primate ownership, except for a ban on their importation from outside the country. So there's just, the infrastructure for implementing laws against these is generally lacking in our country, as well as their home habitat countries as well. Primates in degraded habitats also face a larger threat to getting diseases or pathogens, or seeing the effects of pollution or climate change, right? And so we're seeing a lot of these spreads of zoonoses now. The coronavirus is a great example of that, right? We know that the coronavirus was probably transmitted from, a species of bat, perhaps from a Chinese wet market. So these are a lot of threats, kind of similar threats that primates face. And of course, primates are similar to us in genetic and morphological composition, physiological composition. So we could give primates disease quite easily, as well as the reverse. So we are facing this, oh, sorry, yeah?
Sorry. We have a question in the chat going back to the male care. What happens if the male dies in the course of caring for the infant? Does the female find another mate or take over child rearing, or would the infant die?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. I'm not sure, I'm not familiar with any studies that have witnessed the death of a male, although I think if I remember correctly, in one study, one of the mates disappeared. And I think the female then found another mate, but I'm not sure if they had an infant at that time. So yeah, I'm not familiar with any studies that have witnessed that aspect. That's a good question. Yeah.
Thanks. That's all for now.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes. So we're facing an extinction crisis, right? The percent of species endangered per region is quite high, especially Asia. As you can see here, 71% of the primate species in Asia are threatened with extinction. And then the study that came out in 2017 also shows you global primate richness around the globe. So this top image here of the globe is showing you where most primates are found in the different regions, right? And then separated by the neotropics, mainland Africa, Madagascar, and Asia, the number of species that are declining in red and the number of species that are threatened in green. So you can see again, quite high, Madagascar and Asia as well. It's particularly urgent for Madagascar, just because lemurs are found in Madagascar and nowhere else in the world. So if we lose that biodiversity, that would be quite a devastating loss. So what can you guys do? You can do a lot. You can do a lot. As you know, as somebody that's interested in nature, you can donate to organizations, change industry and consumer habits, say no to primates as pets, support local conservation initiatives, and educate yourselves and others. So I'll go through each of those. Donate to organizations, right? Why is this important? This is important because those organizations, especially, you know, in particular, those who are working on the ground, in the field, boots on the ground with other organizations and institutions from those habitat countries, they can then provide money to those organizations to help in conservation initiatives, or provide monies or supplies to locals. And especially this time during COVID, right? We're losing a lot of, people are losing their jobs as park rangers and their ability to protect primate habitats. They're not working as rangers or field assistants or eco guides anymore. So their salaries are gone. So you can help, you know, provide this, this kind of gap that's been created. You can also, you know, the money can also be used toward equipment and supplies and education materials. Money can also go toward research or direct conservation initiatives like habitat protection. So do some research. Some of you might know, you know, some of the more well-known ones like the Jane Goodall Institute, or Lemur Conservation Foundation, Bonobo Conservation Initiative, or Save the Golden Lion Tamarin. All have strong in-country partner components, right? They partner with organizations or institutes of habitat countries. So do your research before you donate money. Make sure they engage in conservation initiatives, that they're involved in protected lands, education, maybe ecotourism, scientific research, reforestation, things like of that nature. Another thing that you can do is change industry and consumer habits, right? Promote and buy sustainable timber products, or sustainable palm oil, or buy shade-grown coffee, anything that promotes sustainable management. You can write to companies to you know, use these kinds of initiatives to transform their industry into sustainable industries, you know, push for sustainable practices in all aspects of companies, you know, chain of productivity, right? From where they get their product to manufacturing to distribution. Anything that's related to forests or forest products, right? Like nuts or oils or fruits. Encouraging those sustainable forest management practice go a long way. You can see, you know, some of the sustainable forestry initiatives here that I've listed, bird-friendly coffee, and then the RSPO, which is that roundtable. It stands for Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil. So that palm oil production should be comprised of legal, you know, economically viable and environmentally appropriate and socially beneficial management and operations. Third, say no to primates as pets. It's kind of that silly picture there, but you know, it's also kind of burgeoning, unfortunately, due to the expansion of social media. Don't like, share, post primate photos or videos where they're featured in these questionable situations, right? If they're dressed up, if they're being used as props, if they're being, you know, taught to ride bicycles or whatever. Many studies have shown the damage social media has done on primates. Recent studies demonstrated that if people look at pictures in primates in kind of stereotypical settings, like in human settings, it increases their desire to have these primates as pets. And it also decreases the likelihood of people thinking that primates are endangered. So don't support, you know, these kind of roadside attractions or pop-up zoos, especially those allowing close interaction with wild animals. In a lot of these cases, these animals perform these tricks or do these expressions because they're either drugged or they're cruelly trained to be docile. And so stop spreading that, and you kind of discourage others from doing so as well. because it's really cruel. One of the major things that you can do is support local conservation initiatives. And that can include ecotourism. You have to be careful about what ecotourist endeavors you follow, right? Ecotourism is defined as responsible travel to areas that conserve the environment, but also sustain the well-being of people, local people, and it involves education and interpretation. So it minimizes impacts. It also is supposed to build cultural awareness and respect, and in providing these positive experiences. So make sure that whatever local initiatives that you're supporting raises sensitivity of the issues, to the region or the local situation, and helps prop up local or indigenous rights. And then finally, you can educate yourselves and others, right? Promote solutions to these problems, right? Whatever it might be. And whatever capacity you might have, if it's volunteering, or if you're a school teacher, you're involved in education, you can encourage pro-primate related books at your library, your school, or sponsor a film showing of a primate-centric documentary, and maybe raise money that could go to a specific conservation charity. Have a drawing art contest, or connect with other welfare primate organizations overseas and create pen pal programs or stuff like that. Or you could just, sign petitions, kind of decrease the demand for items that result in the loss of primate habitat, right? Encourage recycling of cell phones, encourage sustainable use of hardwoods, lessen your meat consumption. There's so many activities that you yourselves can participate in. You just need to find your passion, get inspired, and then spread the word, inspire others. So I'd like to thank you. I kind of rattled quite fast, probably didn't give anyone any time to ask questions, but I'd like to thank you all for joining me this evening, and I'd love to chat for a while.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. We have one question in the chat from Lynn. Could you give examples of responsible ecotourism company?
Oh, yeah, responsible ecotourism companies. Well, there's a lot out there. I'd have to do my own research for that matter, so I don't really have any at the top of my head. But I would suggest going through primate related organizations that are doing primate work there. Some of them offer tours to see primates in the wild that I know of. A lot of people are interested in maybe seeing, very charismatic species in the wild, of course, like gorillas, gorilla viewing in the wild. I would just encourage you to do your research. Make sure that the company is, involves local people, right? That it's not some external company where the proceeds are going towards something that involves the local community and that helps conserve the environment, and also that they have minimum impact, right? And I know right now it's difficult, obviously, travel reasons, COVID reasons, and I know a lot of areas have stopped with a lot of their ecotourists excursions. In particular, the viewing gorillas in the wild as well has stopped, and they've closed some of the national parks as well. Again, because the risk of getting any disease to the gorillas is quite high. So those kinds of ecotourist endeavors are not very are not going on right now.
Thank you. At this point, I would like to invite the audience to, if you have a question, and you want to unmute yourself, or would you like to continue using the chat, please make use of the option that is more appealing to you.
Okay. Should I stop sharing my screen at this point?
Sure.
So okay.
Thank you.
Cool. I think there we go.
So Walter would like to know if you have any thoughts on why the high environmental variation drives high facial variability.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you mean just with the titi monkeys specifically?
Yes, I'm sorry. I was thinking about the titi monkeys. You mentioned that they have such a variety in their faces, and I was just wondering why the variability in the environment showed up in so many faces in different facial structures.
Yeah, that the difference in the faces is mostly due to pelage coloration, so different colors in the fur, right? And so a lot of that is you know, just a result of phenotypic variation. So how they're looking differently. You know, it's just through evolution, right? They've developed these differences in fur coloration or patterning, right, on their bodies. Yeah, just like other kinds of mammals would.
Yeah, that's how they recognize each other too, I guess. I'm just thinking here. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, too. Also species, same species recognition as well, too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So if we have no further questions, I would like to take this opportunity to share again the upcoming presentations that we have for you. On November 12th, we have The Million Penguins by William Young. And on November 17th, we are going to see how America is invading the world. And that presentation is from our friend, Dr. Samuel Ramsey. And as I was saying that, I saw one more question to arrive. So Steve would like to know if the titi monkeys you studied established territories, and if so, what happens if two family groups come across each other?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, titi monkeys do form what could be called territories, in that they are fairly distinct from other groups, areas where they range. They're pretty separated. There's some overlap, but what happens is that typically, like I said, the titi monkeys will be doing these loud calls, right? They do it sometimes in the morning or during the day, but usually that's thought to regulate intergroup spacing, so spacing between the groups. And then there's other studies that have shown that titi monkeys will sometimes, you know, the two groups will sometimes see each other and come close to each other at the borders of these territories, but usually it's kind of like they're just doing the loud calls to each other. They might be doing some other what's called piloerection, where they kind of stand up, make themselves look a little bigger, make their fur stand up a little, kind of like cats do. But there's generally no, you know, physical contact or anything. It's all just show. But yes, they do maintain these more or less exclusive territories where they, you know, feed, forage, eat their food in these specific areas, and have their sleeping sites and so forth. Yeah, in these specific areas. Yeah, really good question. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then Walter would like to know if anyone can take your field courses.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I do offer them for college credit. I haven't been able to offer them in a few years, unfortunately, and who knows when I'll be able to offer them again. So I'll keep you posted.
Yes, please. So if and when you offer them again, we will be happy to share that information with our members. So hopefully some of them will be able to join you.
Great.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Anneke, for, again, a wonderful presentation that is also enjoyable. And thank you all for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you again. It was so much fun. Thanks everyone for your questions and for being here tonight.
Thank you.